Google Maps, snapped a photo on your smartphone, or used predictive text in the last week, then you have used AI. Artificial intelligence technologies have been integrated in our daily lives for some time now, in many cases without us even realizing. However, it is only recently that the full force of this technological revolution has become apparent in education. Both universities and secondary schools are grappling with what it means for education, but in particular for assessment. What is the point of writing an essay if an AI can do it better, faster, and more accurately? While we could argue for the benefits of an essay, it's important to remember that once upon a time, people also argued against the Gutenberg printing press. The rise of disruptive technology such as fire, the wheel, pottery, agriculture, and the printing press have all had profound impacts on society. However, only time will tell just how disruptive AI will be for our society and for education. In the meantime, teachers, school leaders, and universities are all grappling with what we do to maintain the integrity of our qualification systems while we navigate this new landscape. The acknowledgement of the impact of AI has been varied, but one might argue that a head in the sand approach is no longer okay. Almost every educator has anecdotal evidence that AI use is increasing. But these anecdotes are also supported by formal research and informal surveys. Data from the UK, USA, and New Zealand all indicate a similar trend. The use of large language models such as ChatGPT, Gemini, and a host of other tools is only accelerating. The prevalence of AI use has particular implications for assessment. In the context of assessment, AI vulnerability is about whether an assessment design makes it really easy for someone to use AI while presenting the work as their own. In other words, unethical AI use. At a more complex level, AI vulnerability raises questions about how poor assessment design may have implications in the way it may introduce bias, discrimination, privacy, security, and transparency issues, as well as concerns around academic integrity and validity. There are a multitude of significant philosophical and practical issues for assessors and educators to grapple with, some more urgent than others. For example, qualification systems require validity, reliability, and fairness. How can we maintain this if we cannot be confident that the work students are turning in is their own? The prevalence and accessibility of large language models means that assessment designers are required to grapple with the shift from simply, is the student work original, to did the student learn and apply the concepts, and how can we really know? The accessibility and nature of AI tools, such as large language models, means that there is no reliable way to detect AI use retrospectively. There have now been a number of studies that show AI detectors are not sufficiently reliable. In addition, there has been repeated evidence to show that AI detectors are biased in their detection. Some education organizations have been using version histories to check for the number of edits within a document. In other words, they are checking if the content was copied in. There are now a number of extensions available that will make your copy text appear typed in. In addition, some educators argue that they know their students' work, and this is how they know if a student is using AI. However, educators too are prone to bias. While we can use our instincts as a hunch for further investigation, it is not sufficient evidence on its own. There is no way for you to know when a student may have applied themselves more, if a student has been using a lot of AI really consistently, so you're actually used to the voice of their AI, or even if a student's language has started to adapt and respond to the AI language they are consistently being exposed to. While AI detectors, revision histories, and our educator instincts might suggest plagiarism, these do not offer sufficient evidence to penalize a student for an assessment. So what do we do? How can we know that a student has done the learning and is able to apply that learning? How can we ensure that we don't just revert to pen and paper tests and assessment styles that don't reflect the technological demands of the workplace and isn't particularly inclusive? At this point in time, being proactive is our only option. What does that mean? It means drawing on the limitations of AI as well as the varied scope of our human abilities. Large language models like ChatGPT and Gemini have evolved massively since they first became available to the public. While initially they may have been able to have conversations and generate essays, I can now use my AI assistant to generate a peer-reviewed literature report on a subject of my choice, then ask it to use that report to critique my own essay on a subject, and then ask the AI assistant to create an infographic of my improved report that has incorporated all the feedback. All of this to illustrate that the fast evolution of these tools from essay generators from just a few years ago. However, for the time being, AI tools do still have limitations that assessment designers could consider. There are a couple of strategies that can be useful when considering assessment design. Most important is that at this point in time, AI is not yet ready to impersonate a student in real life. Hence, we must seize the moments where our students are in front of us. The first strategy one might try is focusing on drafts and iterations. This does not mean simply collecting the student's draft work along the way. Instead, consider how the drafts can be used as evidence of progression. For example, asking students to reflect on the changes they made in light of a conversation, discussion, or experience from class. A second approach that can be used is project-based learning. Well-designed project-based learning requires students to navigate complex problems in the real world. While you can ask a large language model how to consult with a stakeholder and keep them happy, it is an entirely different story actually keeping a stakeholder happy in real life. Producing planning documents for a beach cleanup is different than actually organizing a beach cleanup. Coaching a sports team for a group of younger students is different from planning to do so. Project-based learning offers great opportunities for students to show that they have learnt and applied a concept. Oral presentations or defenses can also be useful in taking a proactive approach. In addition, there's a long history in academia of the PhD defense to draw on. What makes this a particularly helpful strategy is that you can still ask students to write essays that require research and working from home, but then require an in-person discussion that provides the opportunities to show their application and deep understanding of the material. This can be managed through recording peer interviews and group discussions. Another helpful strategy are role plays and simulations. These are helpful because they ask students to respond in the moment based on the knowledge and skills they have previously mastered. This could involve mock trials, historical reenactments, or crisis simulations. The Model United Nations is a great example of simulations and role play. In this model, students are assigned a country to represent in one of the UN's numerous committees with preset topics to debate. They research the background of the country's position on the topics at hand, and prepare notes on possible solutions to the problems faced. Students then convene at Model UN conferences, which range in size from 100 to sometimes 5,000 delegates, to debate their assigned topics, with students representing other UN member states. Much like the real United Nations, the goal is to identify solutions by negotiation and consensus, on which many countries can agree. Any one of the strategies discussed previously may not be enough to show the authenticity of assessment evidence. Hence, a useful approach is in combining strategies. For example, students might produce a literature review, discuss the findings of that literature review in person, and reflect on how their thinking has shifted since beginning the assessment. This multimodal approach can help build assessor confidence that the student has successfully acquired the skills, knowledge, or capability that we are assessing. In addition, it has the added benefit of helping students to review and refine their work, allowing much deeper learning. To conclude, I'd like to remind us of the legend of John Henry. This legend became popular in the late 19th century as the effects of the steam-powered Industrial Revolution affected every industry and job that relied heavily on human strength. It's the story of a contest between a steam drill and John Henry, a powerful railroad worker, to see which of the two could bore the longer hole into solid rock. Henry wins the race against the machine, but loses his life. His exertions cause his heart to burst. humans never directly challenge the steam drill again. All this to say that if we compete with AI, we will lose. Where globally disruptive technologies are concerned, there are really simple answers. Hence, it is critical that educators work together to find our way through leveraging this technology.